I think we're live. Welcome in, everybody. Couldn't get the program to open. Thanks to Mercury retrograde. You see me, yay! Yeah, here I am. Yeah, I kept like turning it off and turning it on, turning it off and turning it on. Fun times with Mercury retrograde. Welcome into session 1 of June. So excited to be here with you for this work today, because I will tell you, this is work that I need too. And this is work tonight that is never done. Because when you think you've gotten to the end of your work on fear, in my experience, there's still more work to be done. Now, Elisa says I'm quiet. Can you guys hear me? I'm right next to my mic and it's all turned up and the volume looks really good on my system, but I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. So I don't know if it's a one-person thing or if everybody's having challenges, so just let me know. But it's great to see you. You can hear me okay? Okay, good. So Elisa, turn up your headphones or turn up your volume, because it sounds like the rest of the group can hear. Yeah, these worksheets are real. Not that any of them aren't. Okay, good. Okay. So, I'm going to bring you over here. These are our tools for June. And, I'm gonna get my bell. I'll ring my bell, darling. Yeah, turn up your volume if it's quiet for you, because my mic is up. I don't want to turbo blast people right out of their, out of their universe. Okay, good. Yeah, turn up your volume if you're having any problems, or put your headphones on, honey. Put your headphones on. Because if I turn it up any higher, I'm going to be yelling at people. Okay, so tools are on their way to some of you. Some of you have received your tools. If you're in Crystal Masters, which all of you are, you should definitely have already received your sphere. These were mailed quite a while ago, so everybody will have their tool. Yeah, so some of you are waiting on your tools, but I did want to show them to you. You will have them very shortly, including your wah-wah tube. So these are the tools for this month. The only reason I put mine out is just to show you and get you excited, and then I want to burn a little bit of our incense. So I'm going to light up a charcoal disc. The incense blends for me this year have been my favorite part of the toolkits. I know that probably sounds really funny, but it was a concept that I designed, and usually when I come up with something new, people copy it. I'm really amazed nobody else has done it yet. Which are the incense shakers. I'm addicted to these. I don't know about you, but this and copal is all I use anymore, pretty much, for incense. And the flight incense, by the way, this one that's coming to you, because we're working with breath this month. Our journey is going to be a breathwork journey in June, which I'm really excited to lead you through. This is white sage with dandelion from Croatia, chamomile from Poland, and then reishi mushroom from Japan, which represents the last of our alchemical work. So, and reishi mushroom is super magic, right? So I love the combination, and that chamomile will be very good for peace. So I'm going to give just a little bit of that to you. Take a nice deep breath right there. I'm going to pass a little bit over the rest of my tools here, just to open the space and start the energy flowing. So I hope you're excited. Your July tools, at the end of our class tonight, I'm going to give you a little preview. And then I think you have, Alexis, is it the 14th? They have to register by the 14th at midnight or subscribe to get their tools. Is it the 14th or the 15th? I think it's the 14th at midnight. I think you have until Monday at midnight if you want to get the July tools, right? They're fun, right? The little shakers. No, Deborah, because the problem is, and I'm sure this will make sense to you once I explain it, we only are able to order enough ingredients to make enough of these things for people who buy the kits, because it's actually very expensive to make your tools. That's why we have you subscribe early, so we know how much to buy, how much to make. because like the incense alone is expensive for us to make. It's usually rare things. We have to grind them in-house by hand. We have to put the chipstones together and everything. So unfortunately, if we were like a bigger operation, I might be able to make extra candles or extra incense or extra, you know what I mean? But we're not. And so I'm only able to make enough of the things to fulfill the kits, and we put the kits together as we make the things to stay organized. So anyway, we'll talk about tools at the end of our class tonight, but I wanted to show you this month's tools so you know what we're working with. And I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, we'll do July preview at the end. So tonight what we're doing, session 1 is always your session where I scratch your brain, right? This is your intellectual deep dive. And then session 2 is Crystal Masters of Soul Shift. Session 3 is our journey. And session 4 is our crafting. And this month we're carving into our candles. I hope you're excited. I couldn't be more excited. I love this craft that's coming. And we're going to be working with our wah-wah tubes during week 3 as part of our journey. And I'll be incorporating that sound tool into your journey, so I'm really excited to teach you all about that. Session 1 and 2 are your favorites. I have to say, as a professor, session 1 is my favorite because I love teaching, and I love teaching like this. I'm used to being in front of big lecture halls, and sometimes I miss it. So this is kind of our lecture hall where I get to be professorly with you. Journey's fun too, though. I mean, I always like a good journey, and I do like to craft. I mean, you know me, I've always got like 6 different crafting projects in progress. So there isn't, I don't know that I really have a favorite, but I sure love session 1. So these are the worksheets for June. These are always in your classroom. We have some new people. Anybody new tonight? Is this session 1 first session for anybody who's in our group? I forgot to put my snake ring back on after I washed my hands. This is coming tomorrow. Don't tell anybody, but my snake ring is coming to Sage Goddess tomorrow. I'm so excited. It's my Cleopatra ring. This is a replica of a ring that is believed to have been owned by Cleopatra with emeralds and the snake, which was her, very important symbol to her. Look at that. So Elizabeth and Lisa Zara, Megan and Shauna. Look at that. And Carrie. And it's Sarah's first live. Danica's new. How fun is that? Carolyn Cook, Jordana Young, Stormy Henry, Terry Colares. How nice to see you guys. Circe's first class. First one were for Regina. Nancy's first. I know. It's so nice to welcome you. No, it's sterling silver with 14 karat gold over. Yeah, we you know how we're trying to replicate these ancient designs? This is a very ancient ring, and it's cool because it's adjustable. But yeah, it's one of our Sage Goddess originals. See the little marking inside. We put emeralds for his eyes because hers had emeralds for the eyes. I don't know if you can see. It's kind of hard to get the camera to focus. There we go. Anyway, he has emerald eyes and then a little emerald on his head. Isn't that cute? The alchemy ring is not done yet because of COVID. Gotta love a pandemic. Anyway, yay. Okay, so welcome to everyone who's new. I know, and Kaz is like, I'm seasoned. You sure are, darling. I'm happy to have you here. So I'm excited for tonight's class because, this class is called Soul Shift, and some of the months shift us further along our path than other months, at least in my experience. Like, you'll have a month where you're like, that was interesting, I learned something, but you don't feel that kind of like, wow, right? Of like of really seeing the dramatic transformation in your life. I think this month's class and next month's class, in my opinion, have the capacity to really be game changers. It depends on how much you're willing to engage what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, and what I'm going to tell you about tonight is this. First of all, I am not a licensed therapist. I have a PhD in educational leadership, and all of my electives in my doctoral program were in adult and developmental psychology. So I have extensive knowledge in the field of psychology, which made me a really good coach back in the day. I was an executive coach for quite a few years to Fortune 50 executives. So I know how to coach people, and I have a lot of training in psychology, but I'm not a therapist. So this class, which addresses fear and anxiety and trauma, is not meant to be a substitute for the really deep therapeutic work that you would do with a licensed therapist. And so you don't have to go too deep tonight if you don't want to. I kind of want to invite you, because in therapy it's good to go deep, right? You're trying to heal, in some cases, really deep old wounds, and sometimes going in and really digging up the muck is very helpful. I will tell you, for me, I think try to work with what's at the surface first. And the analogy I always use, which might make you laugh a little bit, is, slough off the dead skin first, right? When you're doing spiritual exfoliation, right? Well, I was going to say, I'm not a licensed therapist, but I have almost as much training as a therapist does. But I always have to give you that caveat, because it's important, right? I try not to overstep my boundaries. And I work with a therapist. My therapist is an energy worker, but she is a licensed therapist too. And there is a time and place for therapy. I will say therapy is great. It's also really expensive. Therapy is way more expensive than Soul Shift. But when you exfoliate your skin, let me speak for myself. When I exfoliate my skin, I don't go in there and start ripping off healthy skin, right? Living skin. I go in trying to take like a layer off, of like the gross, funky stuff. We're not trying to break skin or draw blood tonight. Do you know what I mean? So keep your exfoliation high and light. Don't go in and start ripping off good skin. And that's how this work can be really productive without being overwhelming, is how I would look at it. If you want to take off, living skin, do that in therapy. Well, my therapist is very non-traditional. I'm really lucky because I'm her only client, I'm her only patient, I should say, who is not also a licensed therapist. She took me on because of what I do. She's like, you're not a therapist, but you are a therapist, so I'll take you on. She's a therapist to therapists. Isn't that cool? All she does is work with therapists to help them process what their clients are going through. And so my friend referred me to her. Was like, you've got to work with her. Like all she does is train the trainers, right? She coaches the therapists. And so I've learned a lot from her. It's a pretty cool thing. It's nice to know there are therapists out there that just focus on other therapists. Isn't it? Kind of a cool thing. Your cats are therapists. Bodhi's been a therapist for us the last couple of weeks. He's really brought a lot of mental wellness and a lot of joy and laughter and stuff. So hopefully you've got some fun things in your life right now too. I know. Okay, so are you ready for tonight? So tonight we're going through all of these worksheets, and they're all important. We're going to spend plenty of time on it. And I have lots of notes, as I always do, that I want to go through with you. So I'm going to dive right in. What I will say is this. I'm going to save time at the end tonight for questions. I really am. And I'll try to answer questions as we go. I do try to focus more for the first part of class, so if I don't answer a question, I'm not ignoring you. But a lot of people really like it when it's just me looking at you, focusing on the content, and then we'll do a lot of deeper Q&A at the end. And any question is fair, I may not have all the answers. We also have some pretty talented people in the community too who might have some wisdom to share with you, and I love that, right? So, thank you for that. Yeah, Little Fuzzy Butt is with Dave today because it's a teaching day and it helps me to be able to focus when he's not running around barking. Okay, and don't worry, if you have not gone through the worksheets yet, this is not a university class. I'm not going to sit here and take attendance and go, well, did you do your worksheet? Oh, you didn't? Oh. And put a little X next to your name. That's not what this is. You do this work at your own time, at your own pace, and in your own way. I'm here to guide the process, answer questions, and inspire you as we go along. Some people are not going to do this class till October because that's when it's going to make sense for them to do it. I don't care. You have till the end of the year to finish your classes, okay? So take your time. That's the whole joy of not teaching university anymore, is I don't have to give you a grade and I don't have to keep track of your homework. Okay, so let's dive right in. Now, we're just going to walk through page by page. The first couple of pages up until page 7 is all about fear. Starting at page 7, we talk about rites of passage, also known as transits in astrology. When planets return to the place they were when you were born, it's called a return, right? You have a Chiron return, you have a Uranus return, and you have multiple Saturn returns in your life. We're going to focus on those tonight because I have so much to tell you tonight, so just bear with me. I'm going to go as quickly as I can and try to maintain a thread so it's easy and clear to follow. But this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I'm going to try to just stay aligned to what we're doing here and not get distracted. The main thing I will tell you is this. The transits, the returns, tend to bring up your fears, okay? If you're in your 20s and you haven't hit a return yet, because your Saturn return is really the first big return that comes to you at 27, 28. I started my Saturn return at 26 when I met Dave. Dave was my grand ushering into my Saturn return. And I'll tell you that story if you want to hear it, because I knew what was happening when I met him. And it's so clear. I had a conversation with him in my office because at the time I was a teacher, a professor at USC. And I was teaching undergraduates, and I had my own private office. And he came to my office one night, and he looked at me. We were friends, but we were starting to get kind of more than friends. And he was 20, had just turned 21 when this was happening. This is 20 years ago. And I had just ended a relationship with a man I was engaged to, who I'm still friends with, by the way. He's the one who did the charity that we donated to for a couple of weeks ago. He does the Drive for Men, about mental health and different forms of cancer and suicide awareness. So anyway, he's an amazing human being, and he adores Dave. But at the time, I had just broken off that relationship, and Dave was sitting in front of me in my office, and Dave said, if we do this relationship, it's going to really be deep. Are you sure you want this? And I looked at him, and I'm like, are you sure you want this? Like, I can tell, and are we sure we want this? And I think we both knew it was a crucible of sorts, right? That this was going to be the relationship. And with that, after that night, literally my Saturn return started. And it was like, I could just feel the shifting and the forcing and the changing and the upheaval, but also, evolving and moving into the next phase. There's usually some sort of catalyzing event that initiates at least your Saturn returns. Whether it's meeting someone or leaving someone, moving somewhere new, changing your job, there's usually some sort of event. And the same thing happens at the second Saturn return. Now, I have not hit my second Saturn return. I'm approaching my Chiron return. So, but it's really true. And what's really cool looking back on that is that Dave, at 21 years old, was old enough to know and to sense and see that he was about to change my life and I was about to change his in some pretty profound ways. I don't know a lot of 21-year-olds who have that sense about him. He's always been a little bit wiser than his years. But I remember just looking at him and going, my answer to this question is going to change my life. You know what I mean? It's like one of those moments. It's big. What if I had said no? What if I had said, I'm good? I mean, I still would have had my Saturn return, but who knows what would have happened, right? Yeah, truly old soul. And how cute of him to give me permission to choose. You sure you want this? It's deep, right? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Well, Alexis, you will go through and things will shift. And we don't always change relationships or jobs, right? But there is always a fundamental transformation that happens within. So we'll get there in just a second because Oh, sorry. Thank you for that, Daimichi. I didn't mean to. I try not to touch the mic, but it's hard, you know what I mean, to track the feed and be present and notice where my papers are. So bear with me if I do that again. I apologize. What was I saying? This is why I need to focus on here. Anyway, I'll come back to it. But let's talk about fear first, and then we'll talk about the transits and the returns. Okay, so let me start with my proper notes. By the way, this is the end of the separation phase in alchemy, as I described to you last month. So after this month, we will be moving into conjunction. And think of, when I say conjunction, I want you to think union, okay? This is a reunion of the different parts of yourself so that you can come back together and create wholeness after this month. So this is the last month where we're really looking at just you, right? After this, we're going to be looking at you in relationship to others. We're going to be looking at you in relationship to yourself, your masculine, your feminine, how they dance together. So there's going to be a lot more duality in the months that follow tonight, really, including next month's worksheets are going to take us in kind of a different direction. So this is your last month to really focus in, and I know it sounds funny, but be selfish. You know, like this is just about you. And the big question guiding us this month for our work in June, you ready, is how do you know you, your true essence, without fear? Who are you when you are absolutely not afraid? Because fear changes you. Fear changes how you react to things. Fear changes the kind of decisions that you make. Fear changes your relationships. Fear changes your level of courage and bravery, right? And I'm going to sprinkle tonight with some examples from my own life because I have a genetic line full of fear. And you know what's interesting to me when I look back? And there's different kinds of fears. My grandmother lost quite a few children. Miscarriages and stillbirth. And because spina bifida runs in my family, I don't know if you know what that is, it's a terrible thing. And so I had to be tested and retested for spina bifida every time I got pregnant. It's part of the reason why I didn't have any more children, just constantly worrying about genetic stuff. And I could literally feel my grandmother was not alive when I was pregnant with my kids, but I could feel her anxiety. I mean, I literally could feel like, are these kids going to make it? Is it going to be okay? And both of my deliveries of my children were a little dramatic. Nick came early and Zoe was emergency C-section. And so I feel like if I had been, I guess this is where I'm going with tonight, if I had been more aware of my epigenetics and how those, and I'll explain what that means in a minute, and how those can impact how I show up to my life and make decisions and how I experience my reality, I would have had easier pregnancies. I can almost guarantee you. I wish I had found a soul shift class in my early or mid-20s. I wish I had, I guess, anybody teaching me any of this. I really had no idea. It's really true. I really had no idea that I could have an imprint of my ancestors' fear and be picking up on it both consciously and subconsciously and manifest something. Do you know what I mean? So I hope this helps you. Always in my teaching, I think, well, I didn't get it. Maybe there's a reason that nobody taught me this, right? So I was supposed to go through that experience, and I was supposed to not know what was happening. But if I can pass this information along to you, and if I can keep you from manifesting something rooted in your genetic line, honestly, that kind of makes it okay for me. You know what I mean? Like, that heals it for me. If I give you this information, and even just one thing in your life, you don't do the same BS that I did because I didn't know what was happening. I was so absolutely not consciously aware of it, right? That will make all of the experiences that I've had worthwhile. The good news is I'm not quite 50 yet, and I think I have a nice long path ahead of me. And so my goal now is to not participate in bullshit. All right, my goal now Isn't that a lofty goal? My goal for this year is that I will not participate in bullshit. Cheers from the back row. Yeah, cheers. I'm not going to do it, right? But now I'm more aware. When I start to see these things, it's like, that's what you're doing, and that's why you're doing it. Okay. So let me just make sure I'm going through my fears, or through my notes. So this month is about living into your true essence without fear. Now, the reason why we have to do this work this month is because we leave Scorpio after this month and we go to Taurus. And Taurus, I love you, Taurus. Taurus is not our teacher of transformation. Taurus is our teacher of embodiment, right? I don't have anything in my chalice tonight, or I would cheers you on that, right? Cheers, darling. Invisible cheers to our no BS, right? So anyway, we're leaving Scorpio, we're heading toward Taurus. And so if we're going to do any of this transmutation, leaving fear behind, letting it go, understanding and seeing the imprints and the patterns and becoming aware and not repeating these, these lineage lessons, as I call them, then this is the month we have to do it. After this, we won't have the same support, right? I know. I love you, Taurus, but you're not here for transmutation. Not like Scorpio is. Scorpio will straight up take your stuff and put it in the darn compost bin and go, you can't have that anymore. And if you're a Scorpio, you know it's true, right? You know it's true. Okay. So epigenetics. Here's my definition of epigenetics. I wrote it down so that I wouldn't forget the exact wording I wanted to share with you. Epigenetics is how your behavior and your thought patterns today are influenced by experiences in the past. Let me say that again. Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and your thought patterns today are influenced by the experiences of the past. Now, the best example of this that actually my therapist shared with me, she's Jewish, and her family survived the Holocaust. My husband's family survived the Holocaust, some of them. And so she and I connect on that level, right? Because I'm not Jewish, but my kids are, and my husband is, and so it's in their epigenetic line. And the example that she shares is that survivors of the Holocaust were studied. Okay, it's fascinating, actually. Survivors. And survivors of the Holocaust, consistently in these tests that they did, produced less cortisol. And they also produced less of the enzyme that helps to process cortisol in the body. Okay? Because if you're constantly in a state of stress, okay, then your cortisol levels are high, but eventually you it's like a burnout, right? There's less of the enzyme, there's less of the cortisol itself. And what's interesting is the second generation after the survivors of the Holocaust had slightly higher levels of cortisol and slightly higher levels of the enzyme to process, right? And now they're studying the third generation now out of survivors of the Holocaust, right? And they have slightly more. I'm curious, like my kids, I haven't had their cortisol level checked, but they would be considered third generation, is that right? Second or third generation survivors. So, and I share this example with you because if you think about what that means, people who survived the Holocaust were exposed to extreme levels of fear on a consistent and ongoing basis for a long time, right? Now, that's an extreme example, but a lot of us have been exposed to fear in different contexts, in other ways, and I'll give you an example from my personal lineage, right? I don't know Stacey Adams, by the way. If they did studies about their adrenal glands, I can ask and find out more information for you. So it's cellular memory, Danielle, but it's manifested in biology, right? So it's not just, oh, my cells have a memory of this. It's like my cells have a memory of this, and that is showing up in my blood tests. Do you know what I mean? That for me is epigenetics. Epigenetics is, and yes, so slavery in America, okay, would be another example of this. If your parents went through other kinds of extreme events, war, for example, okay, My grandparents lost their home. They lost members of their family. They lost their business. Everything mobbed overnight. There was nothing left. Their house was leveled. Their business was leveled. And then my grandfather had to go off to war. So my grandmother was left with 6 kids, no money, absolutely no food. They ate grass and they drank cow's blood because it was the only way that my grandmother could give. My dad was the baby, and so she had to feed him that because otherwise there was no protein. That was the only way she could keep him alive. And to this day, he struggles eating a lot of meat. Like, it's just, it's amazing how you can watch somebody who was raised that way and then to try and integrate and have a normal life after that with a normal relationship to food. And so any of the wars that you've been through, any of the, and listen, the reality is all of your ancestors went through war, right? In some place, in some way, there was loss, right? There was struggle, there was bloodshed. Now, I've been very aware of this as we go through COVID. This may be interesting to you. And by the way, this was my grandmother and my grandfather owned a winery and made olive oil and grew their own food and were really into that. You know what I mean? So to turn around and have nothing to feed your children and almost lose them because of that, right, had to be an extreme experience. So. But my epigenetics are not the worst on the planet, right? Other people have been through harder. At least they survived. Do you know what I mean? Like, at some point, you got to just be grateful for that, right? Other things, too. It doesn't have to be war. It could be long-term domestic abuse. It could be short-term domestic abuse. It could be seeing one horrific event for a few minutes. Think of first responders to 9/11, right? Think of the doctors and nurses who took care of COVID patients during this pandemic. I'll tell you, during COVID, I've got chills all over. This is what kept going through my mind. This is epigenetics in motion. What these doctors are seeing, what these family members are experiencing, not being able to say goodbye to their relatives who are dying, right? I mean, did you have that thought at all? You probably will look at it differently now through the lens of what I'm teaching you. Because we try to think of this historically like these big banner events, these horrible generational traumas like the Holocaust and slavery and World War II. And I'm not equating those things, but I'm just saying like where you really know there's an imprinting, right, on the genetic line. But on a minor example, COVID has been something of a crucible for all of us in different ways. When you become aware of what I'm teaching you tonight, you go through events differently. Because you start to realize how you process those experiences dictates what the next generation and 2 generations and 5 generations ahead of you is going to be struggling with, because it imprints on the genetic line. It imprints on your DNA. Those moments of fear, when it just runs through your system, and those moments of shock and those moments, they are marked in your line. And so what happens is the more and more you have these traumatic experiences, because you will be shocked in your life and you will have trauma. I mean, there's no way around it. We're human, right? But we can choose how we experience those moments. And this is why I'm constantly trying to teach you, don't contract. When those moments happen and we go, we have to go, right? We can't just do the inhale. We have to do the exhale, right? And I'm not fully attending to the feed right now, but I'm seeing that a lot of you have had some of these really intense experiences, either past or present. And I just want to tell you, I see you, right? I see you. And no matter what yours is, we don't have to do a trauma competition, but whatever your experience has been, becoming aware of how it has taken up residence in your genetics is the first step in the process. It's interesting, right? Valerie's giving an example of even a pet who goes through trauma has the imprint, right? And has to learn to trust humans again and has to learn to trust their environment again. And it's because every time they hear a sound or they, you know what I mean? You can see, I've rescued animals before and you can see how every little thing scares them because it reminds them of where they've been. It's like it pulls up that screen again, do you know? So this is where it becomes really powerful for your spiritual development. Epigenetics is the study of fear in your lineage. Astrology is the study of fear as it represents itself in your personal blueprint. So epigenetics is the big picture, and astrology is more of the unique picture to you. How might fear show up for you? Where might you have to work through some of these things? And like I said, how you experience your returns of some of these major planets is also a moment where you might see some of this stuff come up. And we'll talk more about that too. Yeah. Okay. Now, fear is biologically important. It's necessary, right? Can you think of why? Fear keeps you safe. You know, fear often will tell you that there's something wrong or could be something wrong, and fear will guide you. You know, don't go down that alleyway. Don't go to that event tonight. Fear can keep you in alignment to a certain extent, right? Especially fear in the moment. When you think about doing something and you feel afraid, you should probably hesitate. Unless you feel fear every time you think about doing anything. And then you start to go, is this really about this one thing, or is this me kind of living my life through a lens of anxiety, right? But your fear impulse is your impulse to survive this life, right? The goal is to make it. Both evolutionarily and physically. The goal of your body and your spirit is to survive this experience. That's right. So you get these fight or flight or freeze. Some of us don't do fight or flight, we do freeze. COVID was a big representation for that. If I was still a researcher, sometimes I wish I was a qualitative researcher. When I did my PhD, meaning I studied by having conversations with people rather than doing surveys. And so as a qualitative researcher, if I was still a qualitative researcher, I would write a paper called The Freeze Response and the COVID Pandemic. Because what I noticed is it didn't cause most people I know to fight or to run away. It caused most people I know to go and just stop. Stop talking, stop doing, and everything exhausted everybody all the time during this pandemic. I'm so tired and I haven't done anything. I'm so tired I'm not even working. I'm so tired and I haven't even left the house. I'm so tired and I haven't even taken a shower. And that is another trauma response, right? Freeze, right? So I'm not a qualitative researcher, but I wish I was, because I feel like I could contribute in a really interesting article about fight, flight, or freeze in the COVID pandemic. But I froze for a little while, like an animal again. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What are you doing? I don't know. Let's not do anything. What if we do the wrong thing, right? It's interesting. So the pause can be good, but it can also, again, be a trauma response. It can be how you respond to trauma. It's just, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit here in my pajamas and not move, right? And to Kilo Kaylee, is that your, how do I pronounce it? Saying I'm trying to learn to unfreeze, we have to learn to unfreeze, because freezing isn't the work of the human existence, right? We're here to live, to learn, and to love, right? So we have to be able to move outside of freeze into a state of action, right? Otherwise we're not doing the work of being human and being alive. Okay, now, fear is an interesting thing, right? Yeah, maybe I should still write it. Maybe I'll just write a poem about it. When you are afraid, unless someone is physically threatening or emotionally threatening you right this minute, like in this moment, if you're afraid, it's probably because there's something really significant happening to you. But I bet most of you right this minute are not in an active state of fear for your safety, for your well-being, right? Fear is rooted in two places. It's rooted in the past and it's rooted in the future, okay? Fear of the past, right, is, you know, really when you have to look at it that way is, and how did I want to explain this to you? What was the word I came up with? Hold on. Is memory. And fear of the future is imagination. Fear in the present is a threat. Let me say that again. Fear of the past is based on memories. Fear of the future is based on imagination, what might happen. Memories are what did happen. Imagination is what could happen. Fear in the present has to be based on an active threat, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be afraid right now. If there was somebody outside my window acting bizarre, maybe it would be a present threat, but there's nobody in this room, and there's hummingbirds, but I'm not really as afraid of them. Now, your fear of the past, and this is the main point I want to leave you with tonight, is based not only on your experiences but on those of your ancestors. Okay? And like I said, my pregnancies are a really interesting example because I had no reason to think that my pregnancies would not be great, except that my grandmothers weren't. But I didn't know that really. I didn't know how much had happened until really after the fact, and then I started to dig into it. So the fears I had around my pregnancy were really rooted not in my experience or in anything my doctors were telling me. My doctors were saying things look good, but there was still something in me that was like, but what if, right? And so now I know, because our fears of the past are not just our experience, but they are our mother's experience, our grandmother's experience, our great-grandmother's experience, our great-great-grandmother's experience, all the way back down thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of years to your original ancestor. So you can't even track those experiences because a lot of them you don't know about. How many ancestors do you know about? My mom is the queen of lineage stuff. I mean, she has built her family trees and knows everybody and everything, and we still don't know. There's still a lot we don't know about people. And because there were no records, so in Greece, nobody knows what my great-grandmother's birth experiences were like. She never talked about it. Nobody documented it. And then past that, there's nothing. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of us, especially those of us with ancestors in other countries, because in the U.S. there's pretty good records, but outside the U.S. there's not, or there weren't, at least beginning, in the 1800s and before that. So a lot of us don't even know where these fears are coming from. So it could be rooted in your past, it could be rooted in your great-grandmother's past, and so fear in the present, when you're afraid right this minute, it's usually because there's some kind of active threat. Okay? Your boss is telling you you might lose your job tomorrow. There's some weird dude out the window who's yelling at you, right? Somebody cuts you off on the street and it freaks you out. Fear in the present usually has something to do with something active in the field, okay? Otherwise, we're usually not afraid. But generally, if you look at fear, when people come to me and go, Athena, I'm so afraid, blah, 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 and I start asking them, usually what they say is, well, I'm afraid that maybe if I start this new relationship, what if he leaves me? Everybody leaves me, so he might leave me too, and then what if I'm gonna be all alone? What if I'm like 95 years old and I'm all alone? And what if I'm 95 years old and I'm all alone, but like I'm in the mountains, and then what if I'm in this cabin, and what if I don't like this cabin, or what if it snows and I don't have a shovel and I can't shovel myself out and I'm 95 years old and my knees hurt because my grandmother's knees hurt, and then what if I'm 100 years old and I don't know anybody? And it's just like, I've had these experiences where with compassion, I'm trying to listen, but I'm also like, how did we get to 100 years old in a cabin without a shovel? Like, I'm trying to walk you from being 40 years old today in Wisconsin, and now you're 100 without a shovel. I'm just telling you, you know what I mean? But to that person who's telling me that, it's like, no, but you don't understand. This could happen to me. Like, this could happen to me. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, 50 years from now, I could be in Wisconsin without a shovel. Holy shit. Now you've pulled me into... No, but, and we're laughing because this is an extreme example. But can I just tell you that a lot of our fears are like that? Well, what if? Well, what if? Well, what if that? And then what if this? And then what if that? 100 years old, no fucking shovel. And I'm just like, I mean, you really just sit there and kind of go, right? It does snow in Wisconsin, but how do you know you're going to be 100 in Wisconsin with no shovel? But do you get it? But do you get it? And so sometimes you need someone to walk you back. Like, okay, in this moment, is it snowing? No. In this moment, do you have a shovel? I do. In this moment, if it snowed 100 feet, would you be able to shovel your way out of it? With some help, maybe. Okay. Good. So this is great, right? This is progress. So we have a shovel. It is not snowing right now. But if it was snowing, we could get out of it. This is progress, right? Now let's talk about tomorrow, right? And so what we start to see is people who engage fear tend to condense timelines, okay? They go from age 5 to age 50 to age 100 in like a millisecond, right? Because their brain is constantly on fast forward and what if mode. Well, what if this? And then those people are also really good at playing kind of checkers, right? Like I move this and then it creates that, and now I don't have a boyfriend right now, so I'm always going to be single, and then I'm going to be shoveling my own snow at 95 without a shovel, right? Like, so they're very good at going from 0 to 60, and then from 60 to 120, and 120 to 180, and all of a sudden we're at 200, right? And the act of walking people back to, okay, let's actually come back to right where we are in this moment, right? And see how, if we stay in this moment and we're present, there really isn't anything to fear in this moment. We can manufacture fear, what I call rehearsing tragedy, right? That's right. That's true. I mean, unless you are an attorney, I am not. I took the LSAT, but I didn't go to law school. But unless you are an attorney, you don't really need to be paid to think about future scenarios, right? Because that's not your business. It's really true. We got to walk back to this moment. Even me sometimes, like I will be laying in bed at night and I'll be like, okay, one of my kids failed the test. Okay, now they're going to fail that class. Okay, then they're going to, what if they get held back for a year? Oh my God, so now they can't go to high school next year. So, or they can't go to junior high next year. So then are they going to get held back forever? And then somebody's going to meet them and go, oh, you got held back. And then what if they don't end up getting married? And then what if they don't find a partner? Or what, okay, so, I mean, what? Because somebody didn't pass an exam? But I even have these moments too where I'm like, they failed the test. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to finish their public education. Like, let's walk it back. So this is very important. Past, present, future. Are you afraid in the past? Is this based on stuff that happened to you or your ancestors 100 years ago? Are you afraid in the present, which means there's probably some kind of active threat that could be very serious, right? Are you afraid in the future? What if? What if I don't? What if I do? What if I don't? What if I do? When you engage fear, your body responds, and your body doesn't know. This is the most important thing I think I'm going to tell you tonight. Your body doesn't know when you engage these fear energies. Your body doesn't know whether it's real what's happening to you or you're just imagining it. Did you know that? Your body can't distinguish between the kind of fear that like something is actually happening right now and the kind of fear that you're going to not have a shovel at 95 in Wisconsin. And what's sad about that is what happens to your body, right? Because you start producing these excess levels of cortisol, and what does that do? Well, that slows your metabolism down. It interrupts how you digest your food. You start to gain weight, which makes you feel sluggish, right? It interrupts your sleep cycles and sleep patterns. And every system in your body can be impacted because when you're under stress, of course, your vagus nerve is activated, and so it starts to slow down your digestion because you're having to expend physical energy to support this fear because your body is now in this fight or flight mode, right? And that's exactly right. Sarah said, welcome to a panic attack. And your body doesn't know if it's happening to you right now, if it's real in this moment, or if it's manufactured. And so one of the things I do, because anxiety runs in my family and I have anxious kids, is I'm constantly asking them, is this happening now? Is this happening right now? And they will say no. And they'll go, like you can see the kind of like wind go out of them, right? And it's like, okay. So we're not on the pages yet, Michelle. This is my pre-teaching. If you can go with me, it's kind of setting up the context for what we're going to go through. So I'm always walking my kids back too, like, okay, so, but I hear what you're saying, but I also hear that this is not happening right now. So can we take a breath? Right? Can we do some vagus nerve toning exercises, right? Pinching on what's called the doorway here between your thumb and your index index finger, which tones the vagus nerve. When you pinch right here, it tells your nervous system to regulate. It really does. When you put your tongue, the tip of your tongue behind your 2 front teeth, it tells your nervous system to regulate. When you inhale half as long as you exhale, I've taught you this too last year, it tells your central nervous system to regulate, right? 2 inhales in, 4 exhales out. Right? This tells your central nervous system there is nothing to worry about right now. Tapping your third eye tells your system, regulate. There's nothing happening right now. You can do 2 or 3 of these at once. Sometimes if I really get into a situation, I will tap and put my tongue and do the breath, right? Those are 4 quick things you can do to help your central nervous system regulate in the moment. And these are quick things you can teach to your patients, to your students, to your kids, to your grandkids, to your neighbors, to your godchildren, right? Always put that tongue behind your 2 front teeth. It'll become kind of a habit for you, these things. If you ever see me doing this, this is my self-soothing. It really does work, right? Okay. What else did I want to say about this? So here is a series of questions to ask yourself if you're experiencing fear, and then we'll dive into your worksheets. Yeah, and it's the what ifs, Dawn, and we all do it, right? And you will literally, there's something about the tapping of the third eye and the tongue and the pressing here. You can almost forget what you were worried about. I've had that happen where I'm like, wait, what was I worried about? It's kind of magic. These quick little 4 things. But here are 4 questions I want you to ask yourself next time you're afraid. This is my Athena's fear inventory, if you will. Number 1 is this fear real? And I'm putting the word real in quotes because I would never second guess you. If you said, Athena, I'm really afraid of, and you filled in the blank, I would never say, well, that's not real. Because to you, it could be very real. It might not be happening right now, but that doesn't mean it's not real to you. What I'm asking is this happening right now? Is this part of your current reality? If it is not part of your current reality, then you're either operating on the basis of memory or you're operating on the basis of imagination. What could happen or what has happened, and expecting that pattern to repeat. Both of those are things I want you to start to recognize. If you are expecting bad experiences to repeat themselves, you need to really study manifestation. Because you can actually manufacture negative outcomes, right? If you insist that what happened before is going to happen again, because that's what happened before, then you set yourself up to manifest something that you probably don't want to have happen. So the first question is this happening to you right now? Is this part of your current reality? And I look at the feed, by the way, if you want, because there's some really cool comments and suggestions from practitioners in our community who are really skilled too, so you might also be able to learn from what they're sharing. The second question I would ask you, these are questions I would ask you if you came to me and I was your coach and you said, Athena, I need to talk to you because I'm afraid. These are the questions I would ask you, okay? The second question is it fear or something else? Okay? Fear has this really shitty way of mimicking other emotions, like unworthiness. So you can say, well, I'm really scared that, or I'm really worried about. One of the things I noticed growing up, because I was raised by a very anxious set of parents. They're amazing human beings, but my parents are very anxious. And they're because they both came from trauma in their own lives, both of them did, very different, but not good. They always assumed the worst was going to happen, and so they didn't want us to leave the house. They didn't want us to go on play dates with other kids. They didn't want us to go on school field trips, right? Unless they were there. There was always this like overprotective, overbearing sense. And so I was raised to use words like, I'm worried, I'm scared, I'm worried that maybe, or I'm afraid that maybe. And I had to really work to get those words out of my vocabulary, because most of the time that fear was actually something else. If I say, well, I'm afraid of this, it could actually be that I'm not afraid, I'm intimidated. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm not afraid, but I'm overwhelmed. Maybe I'm not afraid, but I'm hesitant. You know what I mean? Because I don't feel skilled enough, or I don't feel prepared enough. That's not real fear. That's like, I don't know if I'm ready, or I don't know if I'm good enough, or I don't know if I'm worthy enough, right? But it can show up as I'm afraid of. But you're not afraid. You're recoiling because there's something in you that says, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, I'm not. Or it could also be, oh, I'm afraid to do that. And the real answer is, I don't want to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, are you really afraid, or do you just not want that? And so you're saying you're afraid of it, but the reality is you're not afraid of it. You just don't want it. You don't like it. Maybe that's what's really going on, right? So what I would do is scratch your scab a little bit. If it were me in a coaching situation and you were like, I'm afraid to take this new job. Really? You're afraid of it? Well, I'm not really afraid of this, but it's like this big new position, and it's a huge promotion, and I don't know if I'm ready. Now we're getting somewhere, right? You're not afraid of that job. You're wondering if you're ready, if you're worthy, if you're capable of it. And that can feel like fear, but it's actually a very normal level of anxiety. Is this making sense? So these are the other questions that I would ask you. The third question in Athena's fear inventory that I would ask you is, and are you ready for this one? This one is a really big one. This is the question that I ask people that usually pushes them past their fear. This is the soul shift question. This is the game-changing, life-changing question. Are you ready for this one? But it's also kind of really hard. And this is the question I usually ask to people where they're really quiet afterward. Because the first question when I go, is it real? Is this happening to you right now? They'll go, well, yes, it's happening right now. And then the second question I ask is, could it be masquerading as something else? Well, no, I'm legitimately afraid of that. Okay, my third question, the answer is not so easy. The third question is, are you going to make a decision based on your fear that you will regret later in your life, at the end of your life? It's such a big question. It's the rise to the occasion question. Are you now going to make a decision based on your fear that you will regret later? Regret is the one thing I can't help people with, because it's so personal and it can be so overwhelming. It's the one thing that really gets people to tears, is when they think about regret, right? Look at Jess, right? She said, fear of losing someone close to me again. And is that a rational fear? It is. Do you want to follow that fear down a road that would lead you to regret? Right? Imagine if you didn't open your heart again because you were afraid of losing again. Right? That's the game changer. Now, when my grandmother died, before she died, and this is my mom's mother, truly one of the wisest people I ever met in my life. And it's funny because I knew how wise she was when she was alive. She died in 1998, so she's been gone for a really long time. It's hard to believe that we're going on 25 years. I miss her every day. And I knew she was a minister. I've told you a lot about her. You would have loved her, and she would have loved you. Oh my God, she'd want to do live with me if she was alive. She would just get such a kick out of this. She would just love every single minute of you, and she would love every single minute of this. There was no internet when she was alive, so she wouldn't even have known that anything like this was possible. But before she died, she told me that she didn't have any regrets about things that she did, but she had a lot of regrets about things she didn't do because she was afraid. And because she had young children and she was a single mom and, you know, not wanting to disrupt their lives too much. And she made a lot of decisions based, I think, on fear and on looking out for other people. And I think she regretted some things that she didn't do. And, you know, when you're a single mom, it's hard, right? Your life isn't really just your own, and she had 2 children to look out for. But anyway, that has lingered with me. So I will tell you, truthfully, I do not do that. I do not make decisions based in fear because of what she said. Because I don't want to look back and regret. You know, and there have been so many times where, you know, when I was starting Sage Goddess, I think I told you this a couple times, I didn't want to do this. I was so intimidated. It kept coming up in meditation that I was supposed to do this and do this in this way, and then the spirit guides brought me magical sabbatical and like, you got to do this, and I was like, no, let somebody else do it. I don't want to do this. This is scary. What am I going to do this online? Like, who am I? Shouldn't somebody better do this or whatever? But I remember pushing past it because it's like, if this is what I'm supposed to do, I don't want to look back 20 years from now and go, maybe I should have done that. You know what I mean? So her wisdom really pushed me past my comfort zone and continues to push me past my comfort zone, you know, in so many different ways. There's even micro decisions that it pushes me past, you know, tiny things. It's really true. Yasmina has invited me to come to her home and to do a photo shoot with her, and I'm so intimidated. I'm like, me with this model, like taking pictures, having her take my picture, like, oh my God, you know, like I'm so intimidated. And there's part of me that like, maybe I shouldn't go, you know, like who am I? And I'm wasting her time and all this stuff. But she, you know, she's been so gracious in offering it, and I'm gonna go and do it because I don't want to look back and go, I should have done that. I should have run to Malibu and gotten on the beach with Yasmina and, you know, thrown myself in the salt water and taken all kinds of pictures and stuff. But there's part of me that's like, what? A supermodel is gonna take a picture of me? Like, she's gonna be so disappointed, right? But anyway, I'm sharing this example with you because there's still tiny parts of me where I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. But I'm gonna do it next month because I'm like, I should push past it. So if you ever feel like that and you're like, oh, Athena doesn't feel like that, I totally do. I have these moments where I think like, I'm not enough. You know what I mean? Who am I? Why me? And I appreciate you guys. But you probably would be intimidated too, right? If you were gonna go to her house tomorrow and she was gonna take a picture of you, you'd be like, I mean, maybe you'd be all in, but maybe there's part of you that'd be like, am I gonna do that? I am gonna do it, and she's good. She's good at pushing me past my comfort zone. Anyway, so that's the third question that is in Athena's fear inventory, right? You guys are so cute. And then the fourth one is this: can you do the polarity test on your fear? You ready for that? You want to learn about the polarity test? Listen, you guys, I really appreciate you, but you guys are so adorable and beautiful. And don't put me on a pedestal. I have wrinkles and lumps and bumps. Yeah, don't put me on a pedestal. You want to learn about the polarity test? So, how do you know where to work on your fear? And then we're going to dive into our worksheets. How do you know where you need to work on your fear? I'll tell you. Come up with what you're afraid of, okay? My consistent fear, yeah. So polarity, Melissa, is one of the Hermetic principles, okay? Everything in the universe is polar, meaning everything has an opposite, a yin and a yang, right? That's a universal principle, right? So whatever your fear is, the pole of that, the opposite of that, is what you need to cultivate. And it will teach you how to heal your fear. This is the best part of our class tonight, I think. The third question, you're such a cutie pie. Miss Jade had to go to the bathroom. She missed the third question. Is are you going to make a decision based on your fear that you're going to regret later? That's the third question. That's the big question. The fourth question is, do you know what the opposite of your fear is? The polar opposite, the pole, right? This is the polarity test. Do you know what the polarity... I know she's going to give me great tips, but have you seen her legs? My legs are this long, okay, from hip to toe. They're about 12 inches. her legs are like 3 miles long. I'm just like, I don't have to stand next to you in a picture, do I? I'm like the little Snickers bite size of her. You know what I mean? Like one bite and the Snickers bar is over. She's like the jumbo Snickers. Well, not necessarily, Melissa. Are you ready? Well, it depends on what your fear is. My biggest fear in my life has always been that I am not good enough for anything. And I don't know where it comes from. My parents, they were very scared people and very conservative people, but they were amazing parents. They are amazing parents. I mean, they still are to this day. And so my lack of worthiness has not come from them. My parents always thought everything I did was great. It's me who's always thought I'm not good enough, and I don't know where it comes from. It's got to be past life, right? Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Maybe it's the angles, right? Like, or maybe we just shoot from the waist up. So my fear is unworthiness. So what's the opposite of that? Feeling worthy, right? Feeling enough, feeling capable, right? This is the polarity test, Janisa. This is what I'm sharing with you right now. I always wonder if I'm good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, funny enough, right? Enough. Am I enough? Am I enough? Am I enough? So the opposite of feeling good enough or not feeling good enough is feeling worthy, right? Worthiness is what I have to cultivate. And the reality is, with most of our polarities, right? So let's do another example. Anybody else want to put a fear out there for us to run through the polarity test? Anybody willing to share a fear? I'm being pretty vulnerable, so maybe that I'm afraid that my legs are radically short. It's okay. You know, the good news is it doesn't take me very long to walk anywhere because it's not a lot of steps. It's like a shuffle. Kind of like a penguin, you know? Fear of being unlovable, right, Melissa? I've had that fear too. Like, am I worthy of love? Am I lovable? Could anybody love me, right? What's the opposite of that? That you feel absolutely lovable, worthy of love, right? So that is your learning edge, right? Fear of abandonment, right? But what's the opposite of that, right? That you will always be connected. So being connected is your learning edge. That the worst is going to happen, right? Che plays that game that my brain plays sometimes, like, well, what if that happens, right? But the opposite of that is moving into optimism. So optimism is Che's learning edge, right? Like, I need to learn how to engage optimism. Angela, I have the same one, Angela Binkin, which is letting people down. Gosh, I don't want to let people down, right? That feels so shitty. Well, the opposite of that is meeting people's needs of you, right? And that you're able to do that. So your learning edge is knowing that you are absolutely capable of giving, and that you are giving exactly what's needed at any given time. And trust would also be a learning edge for that too, because a lot of times we have to trust that we're enough, right? Because we usually are in our own way, right? So fear of not enough money, fear of lack. So abundance is what you have to work on, and not just abundance, but an abundance mindset, right? Because my parents' biggest fear, because they both lived in abject poverty, I mean, like, not enough food to eat. That's the line for me. Like, if you have in your epigenetic line, and because I have it on both sides of my line, where people didn't have enough food to eat and they were starving, that imprints on you. And so when I talk about abundance and prosperity, for some of us, it's like, I have to believe that there will be enough food to eat, right? Like, We're talking real basic stuff that we have to work on here. Yeah, what happens if something happens to you and you've got a child who's dependent on you, right? So what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is that you will be here and that you will be able to support your child, right? And again, that's a trust issue, right? That's a surrender and trust, because the reality is nobody can control lifespan or anything like that. But the reality is more likely than not that you will be here and able to take care of your child. You know what I mean? And if you shift that perspective, then you start to manifest in alignment with that truth as opposed to the other truth. We end up manifesting exactly what we don't want, right? Or fear of losing your children, which if you've gone through miscarriage of any kind or loss, and like I said, that happened on both sides of my line. So, and I almost lost my daughter a few years ago, as you know, to her health challenges. So that fear is now imprinted in me, because that moment, I'll never forget it. You know what I mean? We were that close. And as a mother, that never leaves you. So I've had to do all kinds of work, and I've healed around it. I actually have zero anxiety about it now, but that's doing about 4 years of really deep work with my teachers in ayahuasca, right? Where I basically had to go into ayahuasca and sit that there. And I did. And let me tell you, that's bravery. Going into ayahuasca alone is bravery. Going into ayahuasca and sitting your biggest fear in front of her and waiting to see what she says about it is balls to the wall. Do you know what I mean? I definitely felt like a big girl when I did that. I was like, I'm going to do this today, right? That's exactly right. Your polarity means you deal in opposites, and this can be a really important way for you to heal, because if you're stuck, right? And Lori lost her son, right? And so when you've actually had the experience, then working in polarities is even more important, because you have to, that one energy is so anchored now in you that the consciousness to shift it is the work of a lifetime, right? But you can shift it. And I've worked with people who have lost their spouses. That seems to be, a consistent theme in my work. People who've lost their children is a consistent theme in my work. And I don't know what it is. I think it's my epigenetics. I really do. That somehow gives me enough wherewithal and wisdom to be able to be of service, because some people wouldn't be able to touch those scenarios, and I'm willing to look at them, but maybe it's because in my line all of those fears have happened, and there's been some level of resilience, that allows us to continue this human journey in the face of what seem like insurmountable losses, right? Balls to the wall, baby. It's not a very elegant statement, but I'm not always elegant. Have you noticed? I try, but, Oscar would tell you it's true. She's not always elegant, but what do you want? She's got purple hair. People with purple hair are not very elegant. Abuse, right, in a relationship. What's polarity for that? Expecting impeccable treatment and believing that you're worthy of it. Now that's a polar shift, right? Ball to the wall. I think that's a new hashtag. Ayahuasca. Ayahuasca. Yes, ma'am. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. You guys crack me up. Okay, so let's turn to our worksheets then. Well, thanks, you guys. I adore you too. We're all on this path together. And I will say, sometimes some of the things that I teach you in my classes are sticky. They're tough to talk about, and I do my best to talk about them in ways that don't recreate trauma for you, but help you process it in a different way from a different perspective. But you have to know, this is why, and I don't want to get emotional and cry, but I'm kind of on the edge of it, because when I look at you guys, like I see who you are today, right? And I see how hard you're working in your life to heal. And I can also see the line of events that brought you here. And it's overwhelming. It's beautiful. It's inspiring, right? It's like, and there are some days where my own personal struggles, whatever they are, whether it's MS pain or, you know, anxiety or worries or just being overwhelmed, there are so many times where, have you been crying since question 3? There's so many times where you don't even know that I think of you and that's what gets me through my day. You know, like I will think of individuals of you in the group and the experiences that you have had and that you keep going. And I'm just like, of course I have to keep going. If they can keep going, I can keep going. So it's very mutual. And it's such a deep well of respect for you because of what you've been through and overcome. And it's different for each of you, but it's equally impactful. Do you know? And there are so many people who just give up, you know what I mean? And there are so many people who, because it's hard, this is hard. It's a lot easier to put a lid on this and to push it down and just stick it somewhere. You know what I mean? A lot of our ancestors did that. They just bucked up and kept going instead of doing this work. And so what happens? You know, we, their children, we, their grandchildren, we, their great-grandchildren have to pick up that ball and try to figure out how to walk with it, you know? Anyway, I'm sorry. I did want to say that to you because it's really true. There are days where you guys get me through it, and I hope there's days where I get you through it, and that's how this community has grown. And the answer, I mean, the reality is none of us ever are through this, right? We all go through our experiences, but when my daughter was really sick and I was really worried, we were really worried that, you know, of what was possible there. It was people in this group who had gone through illness with their children and had lost their children who got me through that experience. Like doulas, almost. And what I kept going through in my mind was, I can get through this because they got through it. And so I hope you always find that that comfort in this group. So, and I'm glad. Yeah. Penelope said, I find myself repeatedly in the same situation I actually fear. Hold on, let me go back to Penelope real quick. Come back to me, Penelope. Where did you go? Am I subconsciously self-sabotaging so I'm always living in that fear because it isn't a fear anymore, it's real and it's constant. I find myself repeatedly in the same situation I actually fear. Here's my best thinking for you. If you're finding a consistent pattern that is bringing up fear for you, in order to shift that, you have to shift the frequency of that, okay? Now there's different ways to do it, and you can artificially shift a frequency, right? You can, and you can work with sound, for example. Every time that same experience or that same emotion comes up, you can work with some of the fear release frequencies, like 528 hertz or 432 hertz are really good for fear release. Because and 528 in particular releases fear at the subatomic level, because fear can take up residence in your cells. And so 528 is really good for sort of, or you can take a rattle and shake that fear. But you have to do something different each time that fear comes up in order to change the frequency and change the outcome. If you don't do anything different, the pattern sometimes just feels free to repeat. So it's almost like the record skips. I know I'm dating myself. Some of you may not even know what a record is or that they used to skip. But records skip. And so it's like every time you get to that same place in the song, it's like, and you have to, if you just leave it there, it's going to keep skipping. You have to shift the frequency, push the needle past the groove, right? And that shifts the response, right? I mean, part of it is shifting the response is difficult sometimes because that's a whole nother level, right? Sometimes if you shift the frequency, your body naturally shifts the response because the energy is different, right? So you show up to it in a different way. It's sort of like, I have so many clients who've come out of abusive relationships. It's just kind of a common theme. But you have to know, people don't find me usually when when they're at the highest points of their life, they usually come to me when they're having a challenge, right? That's being a healer, you tend to magnetize people who are going through challenges because they're obviously coming to you because they need something you can provide, and the universe is guiding them, right? So shifting the energy of the experience is important, because sometimes it's too much for people to think about reacting differently to a stimulus if it's the same stimulus. But so sometimes you have to create the skip for where the record is skipping. You have to create the movement of the needle. Yeah. Because if you just tell people, we'll react differently, think about abuse. So somebody who's been in a consistently abusive relationship, right? They say, oh yeah, this time I'm going to be so brave. And the partner comes home and they're there, and all of a sudden the partner's like, I'm just giving you an example of one experience I remember very clearly from a client relationship. Where's my dinner? It was always the trigger for the partner. And the partner saying, well, I haven't prepared dinner yet. And the partner yells, and then and gets angry, and then the person's like, oh, here we go again. Versus, when they're finally healed and the partner comes home and says, where's dinner? And they're like, I don't know, maybe you should order something. And it's like, because their whole frequency is different. They're not like, oh God, I'm sorry, I'll try to, It's a different reaction. Like, I don't know, maybe we should order some food. It's like, that's a whole different response. And all of a sudden the partner's like, now the partner might still get angry, but they have to respond differently because the person has responded differently. And that's a tiny example. But when that partner starts going, you know what, you're right, fuck that. I don't have to have dinner ready every night at 6 p.m. or whatever. Let's order some food. Or, you know what, why don't you take me out to dinner? The partner all of a sudden is like, I don't know what to do with that, right? It's a whole different scenario. Anyway, I'm just sharing. Poor Dave. If Dave ever got mad because dinner wasn't ready, I would be like, I don't have my readers, but I would put my readers on and I would pull them down and look at him and be like, I think there's cheese in the cheese drawer, and put my glasses back up. But you know what I mean? Like, if you come from an empowered place to an abusive dynamic, the abuser doesn't know what to do. The abuser is used to working on someone who's open to being abused. When the person is no longer available to be abused and the energy shifts, it's like, wait, what do I do with this new person, right? I seriously would be like, on my phone I would go, well, 2.2 miles from here, you could find a nice burrito. And then, oh, look, 2.6 miles from here, you could find a pizza. But that one different response, right, would throw that partner off. It's very true. Get a cheese stick, honey. That's what string cheese was made for. Good luck, everybody. You'll survive, right? Frozen French fries are in the freezer. Throw those babies in the air fryer. Get some ketchup, and we've got dinner. Oh, is that just me that sometimes offers French fries for dinner? Oh, pardon me. Okay, so let's switch to our handouts, our worksheets. No, cheese is a great dinner. I've never known anybody who starved to death because all they had was a cheese stick for dinner. True story. I think you'll make it. I like cream cheese. I really do. Now I'm hungry. This isn't good. Let's talk about something else. Okay, so you can read through the first page. It says the alchemical phase of transmutation, which is where we are now, right? We're at the end of transmutation. Is taking what we think is broken, dirty, or worthless and checking our assumptions, right? You DoorDashed Burger King? Sometimes we DoorDash Taco Bell. It's not always gourmet food around here, do you know what I mean? It just isn't. But anybody with kids who tells you it's always gourmet is, I don't think, being an honest person. Sometimes it's a straight up cheese situation. I know. It's okay. We'll all make it. All right, so we have to check our assumptions. Assumptions keep us in the place of fear. What if no one will love me? What if no one accepts me? What if no one understands me? What if my partner doesn't want me? But every what if has a duality. This is what I was teaching you about the Hermetic principles. What if you are actually very lovable and totally acceptable? And what if your partner totally wants to love you despite all your flaws and shitty pickles? Right? You got to know your assumptions. But what if you don't know your assumptions? Do you know your assumptions? No, really, but do you know them? I don't fully know all mine yet. I'm still learning what my assumptions are about people and relationships. I'm still figuring it out. It's really true. So on page 2, it talks about acknowledging your fears. Yeah. Let me bring that into the camera. Fear can come from real things, as we said. But it can also come from your assumptions. So on page 3, this inventory, the 5 types of fear, I didn't create this. This comes from Dr. Carl Albrecht, who's a very well-known social scientist. And he's also a consultant, a management consultant, which is what I was. He's written a lot more books than I have, and I didn't really flesh out his 5 types of fear because he gets into these kind of gnarly details about things, and I think it's overkill. I mean, I don't think I really need to read in details about people's fears, and I really don't want to do that to you because you've got your own stuff to work out. So with your permission, I kind of abbreviated a little bit of what he talks about just to give you the core principles without all the, detail. So the first type of fear that he identifies, and the reason I think this is interesting is, number one, the fear of extinction has actually been activated this year with COVID. This is one of the fears that's in the collective conscious right now, and you may not have it, but a lot of people do. A lot of people have been afraid in the past 18 months that maybe this virus was going to be the thing that caused humanity to decline. And I've heard people say things like that. For what it's worth, I don't believe that to be true, if that matters. But nonetheless, I think on the deep subconscious level, there have been people who had that activated fear, like, what if this is the end of the world as we know it? And so how has that fear, if it in any way impacted you? Now, here's what I'm going to say. My ancestors went through such devastation in the last couple of generations that my body with COVID went into a little bit of fight or flight, like, what if I'm going to lose my village? You know what I mean? There was a little bit of that I immediately tethered back to my grandfather and grandmother on my dad's side, because it's like, in my body, there is an imprint of shit can go bad real quick, and what are you going to do, right? Again, if your family has not lived through war or any kind of real devastation, you may have been less triggered by COVID and the pandemic and stuff than some of us who were like, what if this gets really bad? And so that's one of the reasons why it's been really interesting to have a therapist whose family are Holocaust survivors, because we were able to have that conversation. My family didn't survive the Holocaust, but Dave's did, but my family survived war. And so there's this similar kind of like, what if? Now, extinction is one of the fears that really is advised for you to release, right? Because the reality is, it is highly unlikely that any of the current generations are going to experience mass extinction on a level that maybe like the dinosaurs experienced it, right? Now, again, we don't know meteors and things like that, but it's not worth extrapolating and indulging. It's good to transmute this fear and to look at it in the phase for what it is, right? The second one is invasion. My daughter likes all those like invasion of the body snatchers or something. I can't watch that stuff, but she's got a Scorpio moon, and that is just like visual ice cream for her. She loves all the zombie apocalypse things. But something taking over your body, creepy crawlies, snake spiders, something could attack you or bite you, or, you know, they'll take your blood, so you don't want to give your blood or whatever. This is very, again, very real for people. This is not my fear, but some people do have this fear. And again, the pandemic kind of hooked into a lot of this, right? Like, what if this virus does this thing, or these mutations or whatever? So again, it's just good to acknowledge that this is one of the extreme fears that usually needs transmutation. Again, looking at it for what it is, right? And again, running it through the tests that I gave you, noticing, is this past, is this present, or is this future? Are you imagining that this could happen? In which case, let it go. Are you sensing that maybe something like this happened to your ancestors? Well, it's not happening to you, so let's transmute and let it go, right? And usually these things are not happening in the present, which is one of the litmus tests for whether it's something you should actually indulge or not. The loss of autonomy. I am somewhat claustrophobic, not crazy claustrophobic. Again, this one's not so much my fear, the fear of being trapped or restricted, but it's a very real one. And sometimes this is a past life one. I've had so many clients who had past lives where they were restricted, or they were, you know, bound, or they couldn't move, or they, you know, were paralyzed, or things like that. And so again, it's like, is this past? Is this a present fear, or is this a future fear? Are you imagining something that's not happening? Again, we're trying to learn tonight. We don't want to do that. If you find yourself afraid of something that has not happened to you ever before, that is the number one fear that you need to let go. Like, completely out of your consciousness. And if it's a fear that feels like it's rooted in the past, then we're looking at epigenetics, and you have to say, yes, but what happened to my ancestors does not have to happen to me. The ending to my storybook can be very different, right? And it's almost like walking yourself through these steps, right? So I'm not discounting it, but especially if it's imaginal, like, oh, I think this could happen, we just can't, as a human species, we can't indulge it because it's so overwhelming to our central nervous system, and there's no payoff to the process of rehearsing tragedy. You don't get that time back. If you ever worried about something so long, some people worry for weeks and months about things, and then the thing doesn't happen, and you look back and you're like, I can't believe I wasted all that time. I mean, you can't get that time back, right? So that's another way to kind of dialogue with yourself, right? I have a fear of water that I know is rooted in having drowned, right? And Zoe had a past life that she told me about when she was very young, when she drowned. So there's obviously some kind of past life thing around water and drowning and all of those things. But so what I did is I got my kids in swimming lessons really young, and I've never been afraid ever again. But that was me taking an active, conscious step to go, I'm afraid of water. My daughter's at least had a past life where she drowned. What can I do about this? Get those kids in the farking pool as fast as you can. By the time my kids were 2, they could swim, right? So it's about taking conscious steps to eradicate the fear, because now I don't have to be afraid of that anymore. Does that make sense? It's a small example, but it's relevant. And then ego death. This is the fear of shame, or that someone's going to take away your worthiness. They also call it like fraud or imposter syndrome. This is number 5. So what if somebody finds out you're not smart? Ooh, what if somebody finds out that you're not good enough at your job? What if somebody finds out that you like to party like it's 1999, right? Like, again, you know, you have to really like be honest with yourself and say, so what? You know, somebody finds out that, you know, I mean, first of all, usually these fears that we have are based in your insecurities, right? I have insecurities all the time that I'm not, you know, smart enough. But I also stop and go, Athena, you have a PhD and you've been teaching for more than half your life. You know what I mean? Like, let's check it, right? But again, it's that little tiny part of me that's like, yeah, but you could be smarter, or you could know more, or you could be more well-traveled, or, and it's like, okay, but I mean, it is kind of a, well, I don't know if it's gaslighting, because gaslighting for me is telling someone that their experience is untrue. Gaslighting for me is when you say, I see a hummingbird in that tree, and I say, there's no hummingbird. For me, that's gaslighting. So I'm not sure that gaslighting is necessarily what's happening here, but you could be gaslighting yourself in a way, I suppose, right? But when I say that I think I am qualified, that's not gaslighting myself. That's checking my assumptions. Do you know what I mean? There's a slight difference. Now, if somebody says, I'm going to go teach college classes, but I did not graduate from high school, but I am qualified for this. If I tell them, no, you know what, I actually don't think you're qualified to teach college classes because you need to have like a teaching, you need to go and get a bachelor's degree and then probably a master's degree to teach community college. That's not gaslighting, that's checking their assumptions, right? Like, I actually think maybe you do need more training to do that versus somebody says, I've got this training, and I say, no, you don't. That's gaslighting them. Does that make sense? Yeah, or I didn't say that, or you didn't hear that, or I don't know what you're talking about, you're crazy, right? Or there's nothing in that tree, and you're like, are we seeing the same tree? Now, the fear of shame tends to strike Taurus, Leo, Virgo, Capricorn more than other signs, because those signs are more fixated on what they do, know, and say than other signs in the zodiac. Let me say that one more time. Ego death, it's number 5, is more active for Taurus, Leo, Virgo, and Capricorn because we tend to place more value on what we know, what we do, and what we say than other people who just kind of tend not to care, other signs, as much as we do about appearances, for lack of a better word, right? Virgo is already so self-critical. They don't want other people being critical of them. Do you know what I mean? Now, the transits, any questions about that, by the way, before we move on? Because those are the 5 main buckets of fear. If there's one that I fall into myself personally, I would say it's number 5. I don't fear ego death, but I do sometimes fear not being worthy. And I have overcompensated in my life as a result of that, candidly, right? Gemini might be too, Kaz. Actually, I can see where Gemini, because Gemini really prides themselves on their expression of their intellect, right? Being in control of their facts and having lots of information at their fingertips, right? Did we skip number 4? I didn't mean to. Oh, separation. We sure did. Thank you. How did I do that? Separation. Now, this is a big one for a lot of us. We are afraid of abandonment, rejection, and not belonging. This one is mine too. This one's mine too. The end of a relationship can trigger this. The loss of a partner can trigger this. When you come into a new relationship and you decide to commit and take it to the next level, that can trigger this. So some people are like, God, I just, got engaged and now my boyfriend's acting all, my fiance is acting all strange. And it's like, because that engagement could be the best news, but it could also trigger separation anxiety. The tighter a commitment gets, the more that hinges on it, right? And the more we worry about losing it, because as humans, we want to hold on to things. We forget that we really can't hold on to anything because this whole thing changes, right? Losing my friend in February was a really interesting experience for me. And I was reflecting on this. I was journaling about this past week. Because it's like, it's hard to explain, but very few people have talked about his passing in his life, at least, in social media and phone conversations. And it's almost like he just disappeared. Like, poof, and he was gone. Like the universe rolled up his life and it's like there's very little trace of it now. It's a crazy thing to explain to you, but I've had this experience. And it's been such a powerful reminder to me that this is all really, it's a beautiful illusion, but it's a huge cosmic illusion, this life. It's ephemeral, it's transitory, it comes and it goes. And so his passing and his almost like virtual disappearance, right? has actually in a way healed me, because I haven't taken as much as seriously since he died. Because it's like, if we really don't have as much time as we think, and it all just rolls up and disappears anyway, why are we sweating the small stuff? I mean, who cares, right? And so that's the separation thing. It's like, it's all an illusion, right? Relationships are illusions. Separation is an illusion. Unworthiness is an illusion. We're all connected. We all come from one source, and our soul is eternal. Those are the only truths that we can hold on to. So do you see in what I've taught you tonight that most of what is really bothering you, making you sad, keeping you from evolving into your soul's purpose is rooted in illusion? That's my main goal tonight, is for you to see that. Anytime you feel unworthy, that's an illusion. You're worthy of everything, just by virtue of being here. Anytime you're worried about being separate, it's an illusion. You can't be separated ever from anything, because we're all interconnected, and when we all cross and go back to source, it's one unified energy field. So it's always an illusion, right? Being confined is an illusion. You know what I mean? Like, because being human is an illusion. It's a literally, right? It's a snap and the veil disappears. That's really what I'm trying to get at. And that may sound airy-fairy to you, but and I think death is the most profound teacher of this. It's like, don't get caught up in the illusion, man, you know? Politics is an illusion. It's the reason I don't delve into it too much or talk about it or spend a lot of time even thinking about it. And my best friend is a political analyst, right, for major news media. But do you know that she and I never talk about politics, ever? Because she does it for a living. She doesn't want to talk about it with me. We're here to have fun with each other, right? I mean, it's an illusion, because tomorrow the political thing changes, and then why'd you waste your time? You know what I mean? Like, it's all an illusion. This is all a dream. And so you're either going to choose to spend your time in this dream creating beauty and manifesting something of meaning, so that you have a legacy that lives on behind you of people who look to you either while you're living or while you're deceased as an ancestor for support and inspiration, or you're going to fight this thing the whole way through and probably end up with physical challenges, because your body's keeping track of your mind, and your mind is driving the bus, right? I mean, it's all connected. I hope that makes sense, because it's really my goal in teaching you this. Think about the most spiritual people you know, okay? Whether it's people you follow on social media, or pastors at a church that you admire, or, you know what I mean? Think about the most spiritual people who have influenced you. Do they seem to get bogged down in illusory stuff? You know, do they seem to be worried about the minutia? Are they online all the time talking about politics? Like, the big time spiritual people that I trust and lean to and look to for guidance, they're not. I mean, they just don't get that caught up. And it's because they don't have attachments. They understand it's an illusion. And they also understand, because it's an illusion, they want to make the most of the time they have here with the resources that they have to do something worthwhile. And I'm telling you right now, and this is why I was trying to say this at the beginning of our class tonight, this is what soul shift is. The shift is your perspective. It's your mindset. It's knowing that when the kids are, and I've got teenagers, right? I mean, if you moved in with me tomorrow, you'd probably want to move out by Sunday evening. Okay, I've got a puppy who doesn't sleep very much. He's adorable, but you know, you wouldn't be sleeping all that much. I've got teenagers who fuss, fight, and argue. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot going on all the time, right? I work a lot, and there's constantly something happening in social media. But there is also a calm in the chaos of, like, none of this really matters. You guys fighting, you're going to be over that in 15 minutes. Dinner sucked. Okay, well, we'll have another meal tomorrow. He's not sleeping well. He's a puppy. He's going to grow up. I have to work hard today, but, you know, tomorrow I'll take a break. It has to be a this and a that and a this and a that and a this and a that. Like, you guys stop, fix your own food. He needs to take a nap. I'm going to go sit down. I'm going to finish that book tomorrow. I might sleep an extra hour in the morning, but it's all fine because it's all an illusion. And anything that stresses me out about today is probably not going to be the same tomorrow, or at least not. I mean, in 6 years, my kids won't live in my house anymore, most likely. They're welcome to live here forever. I'm Greek. We don't think our kids should ever move out. But in 6 years, my kids will be out of my house and off to college probably. And so I'm going to enjoy their fighting. Because one day my house is going to be really quiet. And that's not that far from now. You know what I mean? So perspective is, I guess, what I'm saying to you. Perspective balances anxiety, it balances fear, it balances annoyance, it balances everything. And it keeps you from self-medicating, it keeps you from checking out, it keeps you from getting angry, right? Because it's all so temporary. I wish someone had told me this when my kids were really young and I was, recovering from a C-section, and the baby days feel like they're going to last forever. I would give anything to go back and have my kids in their onesies and, and that feels like 100 years ago. Okay. So the last thing I want to tell you about, this will just take a few extra minutes, and then I'm going to hang tight for a little bit too to see if you have additional questions at the end of class tonight, and you're welcome to stay for a few minutes too, or you don't have to. It's completely up to you. But I want to go through the rest of the worksheets and show you the July tools, and then I'll dismiss you guys, and then you can decide if you want to hang out for a few extra minutes, because I'm happy to delve into your situation and try to give you some good advice too. So these are the rites of passage, starting on page 7, that tend to trigger a lot of the fears that we've talked about tonight. The Saturn return, we talked about 29, 30 years old. Mine started at 26 and ended at 29. So usually you feel the start of it 26, 27 years old. You're in the thick of it 28, 29, and you're usually done with it by the time you're 30. And that is when Saturn returns to the point it was in your natal chart when you were born. So that's why it's called a Saturn return. And this represents the grow up phase. The Saturn return is you feeling pressure to show and prove something. Like, okay, you're almost 30. What have you got to show for it? Because Saturn is a taskmaster. Saturn's like, are you married? Have you had kids? Did you go to college? Do you have a job? And all of a sudden at like 26, 27, you're like, have I done enough? Maybe I need to do more. You know what? I'm going to move to Madrid and become a Spanish teacher. And it's like, wait, what? You're going to what? You make weird decisions because all of a sudden you feel this weird pressure. Did you go through any of this at 26, 27? Or me, I was like, I need to get married. I mean, I'm almost 30. Right? Oh my God. I would go back and tell her, like, you don't ever have to get married. I love being married, but I don't know why I felt like I had to get married by the time I was 30. It's being an immigrant, right? You're not married and you're almost 30? The shame. It's kind of funny, right? With the Saturn return, you either act on it or you act out on it. You either do something or you rebel. And it looks different for everybody, right? Yep. Saturn return marriages are very common. Decided to go to medical school for Carolyn, right? Had your first child at 28, right? Got divorced. That's another common Saturn return. Like, I married you. What the hell? I'm out of here. Bye. And I'm moving to Madrid with my new boyfriend, and we're going to live. And it's just like, wait, what? What? I don't know what the Madrid thing is. I got stuck there for a second. Anyway, the Uranus opposition happens between 42 and 43 years old. This is a minor opposition, but it has an effect on people. It usually ends around 47. This is the height of your power, usually. Remember that Uranus is all about being original, being authentic, being true to who you are. By the time you're 47, you usually know who you are. For me, 42, 43, all the way to 47 were powerhouse banner years. I loved being each of those ages. I'm turning 48 in 2 months. And I feel like this last 5 years, like I'm really good with where I'm at. I don't need to make big changes. I know who I am. I'm good with it, and I also know who I'm not and what my limitations are, and I can be pretty honest about that. So that has been that. The Chiron return is the healer's return. That happens at 50 or 51 years old. All of my dearest friends are older than me, so I've been able to watch them go through those returns. One of my friends is younger than me, but most of my friends are older. And so I feel like I've gotten sneak previews of where I'm headed. The Chiron return is the ultimate heart opening, and it's making peace with what your primary wound is in this life. And finally deciding that you're either going to heal it or you're going to let it be. You're going to make peace with it. It's pretty huge stuff, right? So for me, I'm really looking forward to my Chiron return. Apparently I'm going to be going through it early, so I think probably it's starting this year or next year maybe. I'm really looking forward to making peace with the unworthiness stuff and the not enough stuff, and like either healing it once and for all or just letting it be. Yeah. Danielle's kind of echoing that too. Interesting, right? This is the midlife crisis between the Uranus opposition and the Chiron return, is when people do funky things to prove that they're still young. I married a younger man, so I feel like I don't have the right to have a midlife crisis. What am I going to do, find a younger one? I don't know why that made me laugh so hard, but it really did. I got one of those already. And then the second Saturn return is 59 years old. Más o menos, right? Starts around 56, ends by the time you're 60. I think I probably, if I was going to do it again, maybe I need an older man. I don't know. I'm good. It's your rite of passage into the croning years, right? This is your transition into elderhood. And this is the settling in, right? This is we know who we are. We've healed our, we've healed our primary wound. We're not trying to prove anything anymore. Now we can finally sit in our wisdom, right? And be a source of that wisdom for the planet. Yeah, so how does it feel, Nancy Campbell? She's in it. Hannah's going into her second Saturn. You might be on the leading edge of it, right? I don't know what I would do with a midlife crisis. I have done everything crazy that people can do. Let your imagination run wild. So, like, I've had all the exciting types of relationships, and like I've done all that stuff. So now I'm like, I think I'm ready to go into the croning. I've partied, I've done it all. But the good thing is it's like kind of out of my system. Now I think about all that stuff and I get tired. Like, I can't imagine doing all the things I've done now. It feels exhausting. So that second Saturn return, you think about who you are. You're at a crossroad that is filled with soul searching. And it's about acknowledging the path that you've been on. It's about recognizing we can't undo the past. So now what we can do is commit to living a life that's worth living. Brandy says, do you ladies have any words of wisdom for my mama who's going through it? What would you share with her? Those of you who are living in that second Saturn return, because I'm not there yet. Do you have any words of wisdom for people whose beloveds are going through it right now? My closest friends are finishing Chiron return and approaching Saturn return. So, second Saturn. So it's interesting to watch them because they are in this place of like, they're over the midlife crisis. They're not really trying to prove anything, but they're settling into, I'm the crone now. You know what I mean? I'm the elder. Because they still, both of them that I'm thinking of in particular, always say, I still feel so irresponsible. Right? And I'm just like, yeah, but you're not. You're not. You don't look irresponsible. Yeah, and in the middle too for Karen Brown. Yeah, I like that. So beautiful suggestions in the feed. Thanks, you guys. Nancy says it's been an existential crisis for 2 years. Now, we don't talk about the third Saturn return because most people don't make it there, right? It's 29 years after the second. So if you make it there, that is the sunset return, right? Because we really don't get to a fourth. And there's usually less trauma at the third Saturn return. It's more of just an anchoring of that Saturn energy, right? In some cases, what I've heard people say is they feel like Saturn takes a bow. Because it's taken you on a wild ride twice. It doesn't need to do that for you a third time, right? Yeah. No, it's funny. The people in my life in their 50s and 60s are constantly saying things like, but I can still be irresponsible, right? Or like, I can still party. I know how to party. These kids think they know how to party, but I mean, like, I invented party. And I'm always like, I know, but I mean, really? Really? Don't call me in the morning telling me your hip hurts because you threw it out trying to do some, electric slide with these kids on a beach where you're trying to prove something, Oh, honey. You kids just wait. I'll show you something. Somebody bring me a beer. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, God. You can laugh, but it'll happen to you. Oh, somebody I know went roller skating with some of the other girls in their crew and ended up in urgent care. It's not funny, but it's just like, I used to roller skate when I was a kid. Let me show you something. Oh, boom. Somebody's down on aisle 3. Yeah. It's all fun and games until Grandma starts roller skating again. All right, you guys. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? Cheers. So what are you going to do? You're going to run through those questions when you're facing a fear, right? Listen, we can all party hard when we go to, those of you who are busy building retreat centers, we'll all come there and maybe we can do like padded roller skating. You know what I mean? Where we roller skate, but it's in a room where the walls are padded and stuff. So it's safe for those of us who are a little more mature, right? We can still show off, but, in a controlled environment. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm going to stay steady on my feet. So remember, is it real? Is it something else? Will you regret making a decision based on that fear? And then what's the opposite? That's your fear inventory. All right, so session 1 for June. I don't like to do it very loud. Is in the books. And cheers, you did a great job. I wanted to tell you that we have a stone in the shop tomorrow for fear, actually. We had hearts in this and we had spheres in this, so we finally have the generators coming. I'll show it to you real quick. That's the tricalcite. It's 3 different colors of calcite, and it's considered an anti-fear stone. So those will be at sagegoddess.com tomorrow, and then my Cleopatra snake ring will be at sagegoddess.com tomorrow. This is a replica of a ring that we believe she had. Isn't that cool? It's got emerald eyes and an emerald on the top of its head, and it's adjustable in sterling. So I've been wearing that for a while. That's coming. I wouldn't share that information widely. That's just a heads up for you. Now I want to show you your July tools if you'd like to see them. If you are not interested in seeing July tools, I want to wish you a beautiful evening, and you can go ahead and sign off. And then I'm going to stay for a few minutes to see if you have any questions. Now, the one thing I have to tell you about your July tools is actually quite sad. So the man who was carving your wands for the July soul shift tools passed away from COVID. I think I told you this about 3 weeks ago now. Maybe it's almost a month now. He was finishing them and he passed away, and in India. So there's nobody to replace him. He had apprentices. They're doing the best they can, okay? This is the wand that he was working on. It's a double terminated aura wand. It's like a deep, deep orange color, and it's huge. It's about that big, like 6 or 7 inches. It's really long. And then I'm sending you, he cut these little trillion cut carnelian stones, because I'm going to have you decorate this wand if you want to. You don't have to decorate it. So it's coming with sari ribbon and the stones, but I just don't have the wand to show you because of what happened to him. And so, but this is the rest of the kit. So we're working with Shiva. This is our Sage Goddess interpretation of Shiva. And we've built this into a grid, so you can grid on that as well. Our main craft for the month is we are making passion pillows, because this is all of our work around passion in July. June is, breath work and carving our candle and all of those things. July is starting the alchemical marriage work, so that's the union of masculine and feminine. It's very sexy. You're getting a massage oil. And yes, part of your homework for Soul Shift is to massage. You can massage yourself or your partner. We had these little sacral chakra bags made for you. Aren't they cute with your sacral chakra symbol? So in your kit, you're getting herbs for passion, you're getting stones for passion, and you're getting a little dram of damiana and orange and some other passion oils to make a little passion pillow that you should ideally sleep with. It'll stir your energies. We'll talk about this more when we get to class, what I'm going to do with mine. Then you get your Shiva candle. Isn't that beautiful? Reminds me of Kat Von D, who I love. You get your desire incense. You get both your pleasure elixir, which has damiana and all of the aphrodisiacs, and you get your pleasure massage oil. You get both of those. You get your postcards that we made for you. I feel, I ignite, I speak, and I embody. These are your elemental goddesses that you can add to your oracle card collections if you want. Didn't the graphic design team do a beautiful job of your 4 elemental goddesses? And then you get your stickers, because we always send you a pack of stickers. A lot of us are decorating our notes and our notebooks. And so it's the wand, the mat, the perfume, the massage oil, the incense, the candle, the pillow, the herbs, the oils, and the stones, and that is your Soul Shift toolkit for July. And then the Crystal Masters tool for July is the Orange Calcite Flame, because we're going to be working on passion in Crystal Masters 2. I'm going to be teaching you about the flame shape, I'm going to be teaching you about Orange Calcite, and then I'm going to be teaching you about the sacral chakra and Kundalini, and I'm going to be leading you through a guided Kundalini meditation in Crystal Masters. So that is July coming up. So you have until the 14th at midnight, which is Monday, I believe, to subscribe to your tools if you want them. After that, you won't be able to get tools, because that's how we create the sets without waste, is based on the number of people who subscribe to their tools. Does that make sense? So, and the tools are always optional. You don't have to have them. Some people don't get tools. But if you would like them, they are there. Isn't that a cool flame? Yeah, these were custom made for us. I had never seen an orange calcite flame before, so we had these made. And what I love is it's really soft. I don't know why, but I really like that. Especially because for me, this is a physical tool that you use on the body. And I just really like that all of the edges are soft. Do you see? Like the tip is soft. Sounds terrible. Do with that what you will, but anyway. That's a fun one, isn't it? Aren't they cool? My team and I really have a lot of fun designing your tools. It's like, it's a play space. It's me, Alexis, Brooklyn, Tara, and Claire who get to sit around and design your tools, and we have such a blast. The conversations would crack you up. I mean, they just would slay you how funny the conversations are. Like, do you think they're gonna think that that's for internal use? Nah, they won't think that's for internal use, will they? We should probably tell them that's for external use. He was the same artist that created the alchemy wand. I know, and the summer solstice tools, that wand, he did all the wire work on that. I mean, talk about an artisan who's been doing this for 30 years. When I got that email, it's like, I was just devastated, because we felt so lucky to have him. He was almost working just for Sage Goddess, making wands and tools and carvings, and yeah, it's terrible what COVID has done, truly. Okay, so that's July. Now, do you have any questions for me? I'm glad you like that part of the job, Alexis. You're very good at it. Alexis always has great ideas. She really does. And it's like an endless supply of them, too. She's just the best at what she does. Thank you for that, Larissa. I see you. Thank you for being here tonight. Yeah, it's really sad. Well, we're trying. I mean, in every loss, there's an opportunity. We're trying to figure out what we can do now and who we might want to work with and how they can be trained and stuff. It's really sad, especially when it's somebody young. I mean, not old in the sense that he shouldn't have. He should still be with us. Thanks, you guys. I know a retreat would be so nice, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, because it's a lot to put the kits together, we don't have like extra pieces usually. Sometimes we do, and then when we do, we offer those separately, but 99% of the time, just because you can imagine, it would get overwhelming if we just had a lot of stuff left over all the time. So we usually make the sets just custom to the number of people who subscribe. We're going to talk about Vedic astrology in Crystal Masters. What month is it, Alexis? I can't remember. That's a big topic, Melissa, but we're definitely going to talk about it. We talked about it too. I'm trying to remember when else we did Eastern astrology. What month was that, you guys? I can't remember, but it is coming up and we will be talking about it, yeah. I'm so glad you liked it, you guys. I really am glad. Is the number 4 question about responding to fear basically about doing the opposite of what you fear? Kind of. What it's about is recognizing that the opposite of your fear is where you still have room to grow. Right? And we all still have room to grow or we wouldn't be here. I mean, when you're done growing, you go home, in my experience. So if you're still here, it means something is unresolved. And usually your fear is actually a clue about what that is. So, because you're not meant to live in fear, right? I mean, you're just not. It's not, you weren't brought here to be afraid. And so, how do you heal your fear is the number 1 question people ask me. And my answer is, you try to live in the present moment, because usually your fears are either in the past or the future. So be in the present moment. I mean, there's a reason Buddhists teach mindfulness, right? It really is a way to healing. And then the other thing is, whatever you're afraid of is your learning edge. It's where you need to grow. And once you do, it's like, then you look back and you're like, I was afraid of that? Like, really? I do. Elena Lockhart, I do. She asked, do you think if we're shifting that we can have an easier Chiron return? That's my theory. That's my theory. When you do this work, the punches of life don't strike you quite the same way. You just become a little, it's not Teflon coated, because it's not like you're not feeling. But, like I was saying to you earlier, when I experience a challenge, I immediately say to myself, I don't want to contract here. How can I process this right now so I don't contract here, right? Breathing, tapping, right? I mean, immediately going into that mode and not just sitting in that paralyzed kind of place is, honestly, down the road means there's no knots tied up in your system, right? You're not going to later have a back pain that you can't explain, and it turns out it's like this unresolved trauma from when you were 35 and you did, you know what I mean? So part of it is going through and unhooking the old traumas and massaging out the kinks in the old knots, and then part of it is not creating new knots, right? Yeah. It's very hard. Yeah, Jess said her mother is probably one of her biggest issues with judgment right now, and it's hard. And judgment is, I want to try to say something about judgment without sounding judgmental. How do I do that? I think the true mark of evolution is when you don't judge other people because you realize that there but for the grace of God, go I kind of thing. When I look at people and I start to feel judgy, I'm always like, was there a time when I could have made the same decision, would have made the same decision? Am I really that much more evolved in that person than that person to be able to say, well, what I think is right and what that person thinks is wrong? You know what I mean? Yeah. Any help with core abandonment? Yeah, and ideas for polarity. It's a big one, Jackie Henson. So I think with abandonment, oftentimes what I see, and I'm not saying this is your situation at all, but a lot of times what I see is it's anticipated rejection, right? Like, what if, or anticipated abandonment. What if my partner leaves? What if my kids leave? What if my, boss fires me or whatever? And so abandonment is one where really being in the moment and asking yourself, is this happening to you right now? Like, is this part of your reality? And if not, letting it go. Because abandonment is a frequency. And I've seen people manifest it because they're so focused on it. Remember, when you focus on something, even through fear, the universe thinks that's what you want. The universe can't tell whether you're focusing on something because you love it and you want more of it, or whether you're focusing on it because you're afraid of it. This may be one of the most important takeaways from tonight's class too. So when you're afraid of something and you just keep focusing on it and you just keep focusing on it, the universe is like, well, I guess that's what she wants. It's all she thinks about, and it's like all of a sudden it starts to align you with these frequencies. And you got to be really careful. Just like your body doesn't know if your stress is because somebody's chasing you or because, you're just working yourself up in your mind. It registers that fear and anxiety exactly the same way. So, and I struggle with this sometimes because when I tell people, I think you have to just focus on what you do want to create and try to be as positive as you can, I sometimes worry that I sound like a Pollyanna, or like, oh, just don't worry, be happy or whatever. But it's like, in a way, it's kind of true. The people I know who live really peaceful lives, and I do know quite a few people who really model for me what living a peaceful life looks like, they just don't allow that stuff into their psyche. They don't go there. Did I turn your light bulb on? If you don't know what you're afraid of, then that actually makes it a little bit easier because you can tell yourself, you can do a lot of calming mantras. I am safe, I am secure, I am here. I am safe, I am secure, I am here. And then, do your tapping, do your gateway exercise, get your tongue up there, inhale and exhale for twice as long, and that'll work you through that. But slowly but surely you have to train yourself. Nothing is happening to me right now, right? Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome, you guys. Yeah, I'm being in gratitude. Also trying to recognize that sometimes your body needs to be healthier in order to get to these mindsets too. So trying to change how much you move, being a little bit more active, getting out in nature, trying to get to a more whole food diet. And I know it sounds funny, but a lot of times I think, this is my personal philosophy, I think a lot of the chemicals and things in the foods that we eat can also, create some challenges in our bodies that don't support our emotional well-being. And it leads us to sort of ride these waves, and I don't think it's good for us. Nancy says she needs to focus on her fear of not focus on her fear of getting Alzheimer's. I have a friend, and her big fear is that she'll get the C word, right? Because everybody in her family did, and it's like she's so afraid of it that she thinks about it all the time. And it's like, again, being rational with yourself and saying, just because this happened to other people does not mean it's going to happen to me. And then and that's true. And reminding yourself, no, that is true. It doesn't mean that it'll happen to you. I got MS, and there was nobody with MS in my family. Nobody. What are the chances, right? So should my kids be terrified of MS because I have it? I don't think so. I'm an anomaly in my family. But I have a theory about my MS. And I can't prove it. And my doctor's always like, my doctor's fascinated by all this, but she's like, I can't prove it, but I think it's interesting, My theory is that, because in Chinese medicine they say MS is the result of fear, sustained fear, over a long period of time. And at first I was like, well, that doesn't really resonate with me. Like, I'm not an afraid person. But I think because of all the unresolved fear in my family, and because I, in my family, have something of a lightning bolt, like, I really think I'm here to heal my family. And you probably, some of you may feel like that too, but I think I'm here to heal and filter and transmute a lot of what came before me. And so I think that the MS came as a way for my body to actually transmute in a physical way. And I think that's why my healing has been really smooth. Because I think it's like I took it on as a way to subconsciously maybe process a lot of the fear. And because I've been willing to do that work and step forward and take that on, that, you know, the guides have been gentle with my healing too. That's just my theory, but Elizabeth said, I've been disconnected from my body for so long, it's suffering in the disconnection. I need to focus on that. Yeah, and then your medicine is connection, right? And with body disconnection, it can be so subtle, right? It can be like, I don't know, taking baths more often, or doing self-massage, right, which we're going to talk about with next month and the conjunction work, or buying yourself some beautiful, like, that's why I love Yasmina's shawls, because it's like, it's sensual, and it leads you to cocooning with your body. But I think there's really interesting ways to reconnect with yourself if body disconnection has been a challenge for you. Yeah, I don't know, but that's the only way that MS makes sense for me, because nobody in my family has it, and I have healed better than most people who had such a severe case as I did. I've done a form of QHHT. I highly recommend it. I really do. It's hard for me to do it because I can't really take a whole day off. I know that sounds crazy, but with kids and a family and Sage Goddess and stuff, taking a whole day off. When I do ayahuasca, it's like, it's 8 hours. Like, I have to plan it out months in advance, and I have to make sure I've got this in line and that in order, and who's taking care of that, and are you doing that, and I'm, are the classes on a different day? So me taking a day off is like monumental. Yeah. So I think a lot of us are here for healing that too. Sherelle says, I need to know how to focus on staying in the moment. My mind wanders to the future too much with fake, scary, irrational outcomes that don't exist at all. That's exactly what we're talking about too, right, Sherelle? So presencing is a constant choice until it becomes muscle memory for you. I work with so many people who have moved through trauma, and I've had my own trauma. So while you're first starting this process, it literally can be moment to moment. Like, I'm here now, I'm safe, all is well. I'm here now, I'm safe, all is well, right? I mean, and it doesn't matter how much you have to do that until one day you wake up and the thought patterns are shifting, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, I didn't even have to tell myself to just be here now. You know what I mean? But for a while you have to entrain yourself, because you've already entrained yourself to the opposite. You've entrained yourself to living in the present, living in anxiety. And I mean, I've done it too, so I'm not judging you. I'm just saying you're in a pattern now. So to break that pattern, you're going to have to create a new pattern, which is, I am here, I am safe, all is well. I am here, I am safe, all is well. I am here, I am safe, all is well. Until one day you wake up and you're like, I feel pretty good. And I didn't even tap it, right? Megan has deep vein thrombosis. Oh, baby. It does a number on confidence, sure. Any advice about confidence, right? I think it was really interesting to me last night, and I'm not saying names or calling anybody out, but it's actually a positive thing, what I'm going to say. But someone in our community posted a picture of themselves, and it was late, but I scroll through at night. I don't always comment on everything late at night, but I'm always scrolling because I'm curious what's going on with you, right? So I'm scrolling through and I see this picture of her, and I stopped, and in my mind I was like, God, she's beautiful. You know what I mean? Like, do you ever have those moments where you're just scrolling through? And I wasn't going to comment or anything, but my thought was, look how beautiful she is. Like, it was a sideways picture, and there was just something really magnificent about her profile, and I took a minute to literally have that thought. And then I read her copy, above the picture where she was saying that she didn't feel that way, or someone had said something that was the opposite of that. And so I commented and said, I actually didn't read what you wrote. I just looked at your picture, and my thought was, how beautiful you look. And it was authentic, it was sincere. And I was actually shocked that she or anybody else would look at that picture and not see this strikingly beautiful woman, right? And what it reminded me is, first of all, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and we are often the hardest on ourselves. And the one thing you don't want to do is buy into a negative self-concept and have it limit your life. Like, you don't go to the pool with the kids because you're self-conscious. You don't take pictures because you're self-conscious. Because again, it's another one of those things at the end of your life, will you regret making decisions based on this fear of judgment, for example, right? That was kind of a moment for me yesterday where I thought, here's a living example where I'm sitting here going, this woman is beautiful. And she's going, I don't know. You know what I mean? And it's like, we are in two different worlds about her. And I hope that the takeaway for her was, I need to start to look at myself through a different lens. A lot of times the things that we see physically in ourselves that we see as liabilities, other people don't. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, something for you to think about, right? Yeah, Christine, let's see, Laura J said, I don't think that my hypothyroidism is generational. Yeah, interesting, right? Could be both. Christine said, I can't believe how much I've changed due to pain medicine. It controls my life. I need back surgery, and that's scary. Yep. Well, Christine, and I know a little bit about that because my mom had 2 back surgeries and has had to live on a lot of pain medicine. So I have a little bit of a perspective on what you might be going through. And it takes a barrel of tenderness really to get through those experiences. But I think, even so, one of the things, it's still worthwhile to focus on understanding how energy is moving through your system and to engage every possible non-traditional route, including crystals. I would recommend acupuncture and acupressure if you're open to that. It has really helped my mom. Obviously, CBD and cannabis, if it's legal where you are incredibly helpful too, and can also open you mentally to sort of a different perspective. But pain, remember, is blocked energy. And so I have seen radical outcomes in people who've been through every possible surgery and medication when they really start to look at the energetics of it. Because any level of energetic healing at any time can still move some of those blockages, even when every doctor is telling you there's no way. So working with sound and working with acupuncture and working with acupressure and all of these things is important. Yeah, my whole family has hypothyroidism too. Mine's a little bit low right now, as a matter of fact. I'm getting mine looked at next week. Yeah, and I had Graves' disease, and so you guys know I've been through it too. Your dad's having back surgery on Tuesday. I'll be holding the space, Jess. Just going through that twice with my mom is just like, I've been there. Acupuncture is really good if you find a good person, especially if they give you a beautiful massage afterward. It can be life-changing. Remember, acupuncture is the process of using those needles to redirect the chi, right? To redirect the prana, the energy through the meridians, right? And it's real. I mean, it is accurate. It works. A lot of people are hesitant to do it, or they don't like needles, but it doesn't hurt, and it can be a real game changer. But you got to find a good one. Yeah. How do you get past ego death of domestic abuse and stalker? Things trigger it, and I go and freeze moment. Yeah, well, I mean, these are big things that we're talking about, right? Especially if you have somebody who's stalking you, right? But I will also say, remember what I've taught you tonight is when you shift, they have to shift. There's always more than one party in these dynamics, right? In order to stay engaged in any energetic dynamic, both parties have to stay engaged. You withdraw, the energy shifts, right? So you staying in fear continues to empower someone who works upon that fear, right? So you learning how to release that fear and shift that perspective releases that other person too. I know it sounds crazy, but there are just so many hundreds of examples of that happening. So when people say if you change yourself, everything else changes, there's real truth in that, because if you change, everything around you has to change and respond to you in a different way. There's real merit and real value there. Yeah. I don't think you need a medical recommendation for an acupuncturist. Sometimes insurance will cover it, sometimes not. That's the only drawback. Sometimes it can be expensive. Yeah, it's very different. Don't let a needle thing get between you and acupuncture. If I live near you, I would go with you and hold your hand, and then you'd be like, that was easy, and I'd be like, see, you built that up in your head. You gotta shift it, baby. Right? Yeah. Yeah, so Valerie, retrograde planetary activity is our focus for the July worksheets in Soul Shift. I'm going to teach you what all the retrogrades mean. Isn't that exciting? So I've never taught that before, so I'm really excited. We're going to focus all about that. That'll be session 1 of July. Is going to be your worksheets are focused on retrogrades. Mm-hmm. It's true. Janine said, I feel like that's why I never hear from my Joe Bobs. I just shifted so much they can't get near me. For better or worse, that's true, Janine, don't you think? It's like, wow, how come I don't hear from those people anymore? And it's because they're absolutely on a different fucking frequency than you are now. They can't even, like, be in the same zone. But as long as we stay afraid and play small, we enable that dynamic. When we shift and we're not playing that game anymore, interestingly, those people find someone else, right? There's always a victim. And that's a sad truth. So a perpetrator will just find another victim. But that victim does not need to be you. And that is the reality that really gets people to see from a different perspective, right? Yeah, but Jess, aren't you Scorpio? You got Scorpio in your chart. That's why you like needles. Zoe's the same way. Zoe has to have an infusion once a month for her condition that she has. And they do it here at the house. And, you know, I have an infusion every month too. I don't sit there and watch the needle go in, and I don't take it out myself. Zoe actually tells the woman, the nurse, where to put the needle. She takes the little light up thing and she's like, here it is right here. She watches it go in, and then the nurse lets her take the needle out. She's like, nope, I'm going to take it out. And I'm always like, who are you? This like 12-year-old. It's the Scorpio moon. What can I say? Oh, it's so great. Mackenzie says she's been getting off the opiates that she's been on for chronic pain since 2012. Look at that. Do you know what a big deal that is? I mean, like the biggest deal. That's huge. I have so many people in my life who would love to be able to say that they're making progress like that. So I'm really happy. Gosh, that's like overwhelmingly happy to me, just because I know what that means. That's a big deal. Zoe's a hoot and a half, man. And she's always like, don't use that vein. It's not good. I thought you were a nurse. Look, the big vein is over here. Why are you? And then the nurse is like, actually, you're right. That's so weird. She actually has talked about being a phlebotomist. There's a job for everybody, man. What does your daughter do? She's obsessed with needles, so she draws blood for a living. Yeah, we're happy for you. All right, well, thank you guys for staying after a little while. I hope this was helpful for you. I don't think I was ready to say goodbye to you just yet, which is funny because it's been a long week. I feel like we've done a lot of stuff. We did Crystal Masters readings, we did Soul Shift readings today, we did New Moon yesterday, we did SGTV on Tuesday, we had class tonight. Like, it's not like I've been bored, but there are times where I miss you guys, so I think that's why I wanted things to go on a little longer today. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm hoping to sleep in a little bit tomorrow. But I do. I was sincere when I said earlier, I respect you and honor you so much, and I'm continuously inspired by you. When I have my moments, it's you guys. When I think about everything that you're overcoming, it's like, I can do it, you know? And so hopefully you feel all that energy too. We really appreciate you guys. It's good stuff. So next week is Crystal Masters. We're going to talk about joy. So that'll be fun. And yeah, very much looking forward to that. So have a great weekend, you guys. Really enjoy and take care. Alexis and I will see you on Monday. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Alexis, for staying late. Did I say that?